This kind of thing is going on all of the time in the pyramid, whether it's the specific theory he refers to or not. It's creating a structure which is itself a model of ball lightning. It is the model of ball lightning. And if you go and can you look this up? Type in architecture. What do you call it? Eye of Providence, Ryan. And what we're looking for is the entranceway to the many hundreds of years old Masonic Lodge in Venezia. And you will be able to see, there we go. So when I showed you the model of the non-radiating boundary surrounding the pyramid and going under the ground, that you see where the pyramidion is at the top of the pyramid, that is outside. The Chiro, the eye, where you can see through space and time, is the all-seeing eye, right? This is literally the truth, in my view, right? To the best of my ability. That area around there will glow. It'll glow with an ethereal kind of glow, which is similar to that of ball lightning, because that's what it is. It's a macro structure. Plasma structures are scale invariant. This is just one manifestation of it. You see the glow on those other images there. You've got the glow around... Yeah, the glow. You've got the glow there on the dollar note there, right? This is not a joke to people. This is how it works. So now you go back to my fractal toroidal geometry with the pyramid overlay. Can you pick up those images you picked from the GIF image earlier? So look at the pyramid. Look at the pyramidion sticking out on the two edges, right? The glow would come from those two. Now, if you could imagine that on the surface of each of the faces, the four sides of the Great Pyramid, you would end up with these disc sections glowing. But overall, from a distance, it would just seem like this glowing pyramid. Okay? And I think that the passages there are to release hydrogen. So the one that comes out to the top right and top left, those passages, yeah.
But they're sealed.
They are sealed now.
Yeah.
But when they put a thing in there was like a handle from, one side.
There's Gant and Brink's door with the two nodes, the two copper nodes, and and past that was the casing stones.
Yeah. So, but like the thing goes all the way out, right? So all you need to do is break the outer boundary, and hydrogen will find its way out through the leak.
Okay.
So if you the thing is.
Yeah, it is porous. Limestone is very porous.
It's porous, but I believe the casing stones will not be porous. And if you wanted, you could coat it inside or outside with animal fat or something, beeswax or whatever, if you were not competent at making your stonework. But I think they were competent at making your stonework.
And maybe that specific casing stone was a different material. Who knows? Who knows? They're gone.
Yeah. So the point is that, like, once you've looked through the chamber that they observed in the scan pyramids and then revealed this year, I think it was earlier, or last year, that will show you the microball lightning that are outside the non-radiating boundary, because you won't see it in the air because there's not enough contrast. So you'll want to look through a little spy hole and see if you can see those things moving around. Then you'll know your pyramid is shut down because you lowered the water level. And then you don't want hydrogen in there. One, it'll asphyxiate you. And two, it's an explosion risk when you go in with your lantern, right? So you go and pop the cork at the top. It doesn't need to be properly sealed. It just, the hydrogen will come out of there. And do you know where? It means the output of there is higher than all of the internal structures that you can ordinarily access. And that means it doesn't matter if there's hydrogen still in the top of the pyramid, inside all the cracks and crannies that are in that pyramid. You want it to be there, because you don't want to have to wait until all the pyramid is full up. If you want to start the pyramid again, you want to have most of the pyramid full of the hydrogen. You just want to have to fill the bit up between where those exhaust ports are, in my view, until it comes down to where it can start being below, where the left-hand side is, the inner tor is touching the top of the where the granite would be inserted into the Great Gallery or whatever. So that would be your switching off of the process. Now, I spoke to you last night when I was talking through this, that the subterranean layer was chamber.
Sure. Yeah. I like layer better, actually.
It's down.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't think that was carved. other than by the finger of God, the tornado that comes down and tears the matter out of there. And because it's so intense there, remember that's exactly the same point that you see this, how should we put it, this tungsten being torn apart. That is where the maximum flux is coming through there. Now, if you go back to my presentation that you had up earlier, Ryan, so on the left, you can see what's happening in a hydrodynamic vortex in A, and the depressurization in the Sothic triangle notch, which is the little white slug shape that you've got down in the bottom. That is in the same position as the Sothic triangle notch in D on the bottom left. That's in tungsten. So that is in plasma, magnetohydrodynamic, and in the top one, it's in water, magnetohydrodynamic. Then I'm showing you the overlay on top of the brass plate, and then the overlay on the iron plate that was sitting underneath that brass plate, and the material was moving from one side. And then I look to the subterranean chamber, and I pull it up to the right, and it's this very specific triangular shape. Now, outside of that is just brushed brass, okay? This is in the top right hand, where the blue spot is. I then look at that under the SEM, and what you see is a hexagonal array of pits. And if you go to the next image, that is James Clerk Maxwell's 1860s model of the ether on the right. And that is what happens at this point where the matter is disrupted and falls apart. So the copper is falling apart, and it's by these incredible intense vortices that are occurring. Now, if you take a superfluid and you spin it in a chamber, the water won't go round and produce a vortex. It'll start producing lots of individual vortices with a regular spacing, and they'll end up by producing a hexagonal array of spinning vortices, just as is shown by James Clerk Maxwell. So whatever it is that's disrupting the matter at that point is able to tear metal apart. Tear metal apart. So do you not think it's going to be able to separate water? I think it would be able to separate water.
Yeah.
We've shown it actually tearing an element apart into other element fractions. So this is able to, in that subterranean area, excavate the material there itself. All you need is to make the descending passageway and to make the well so you can control the turning on and off of the pyramid. Okay. And then the interaction of these etheric vortices, there's probably, when you close the door, so the door was like a big hinge thing, and they probably used animal fat to seal it, right? So, there's probably enough moisture in there, or they could just they could have thrown a few bowls around to get the thing going, or it would switch on, and they would know it switched on. They could look through that observation point. They can start seeing those little balls of lightning going around. And go, right, guys, don't climb up on the pyramid. You're going to get toasted. And when I say toasted, outside of that, there's no electromagnetic radiation. It's the non-radiating boundary, that circle that intersects with the sphere, just as it did in the Masonic Lodge from 400, 500 years ago, wherever it is in Venezia. Outside that, you're perfectly safe. When you go inside of that, you will get messed up, right? Unless you're in the fish bladder, the sacred place to be. And if you go back to where it is over the pyramid, yeah, so look where the Vesica Pisces is. The Vesica Pisces includes all of the king's chamber, the antechamber, and the queen's chamber. Absolutely precisely. So that is where, in that center line there, you have a vortex moving one way and have an anti-vortex moving the other way. And so they cancel each other out. So there's actually a perfect stillness in there. The still, quiet, calm of the Chi Rho and the bit below. So I think the Queen's chamber there will be a point of regeneration, but also potentially a point of freezing time, because that might be the point in there where the flux coming up is exactly the same as the flux going down. Now, this comes on to how you perceive time. How do you perceive time?
Time I perceive as the present moment, here and now, always, eternal.
How do you perceive the passage of time? Because there's a significant importance to the passage of time. How do you perceive the passage of time?
Don't understand the question.
So I would argue that it's a rate of change of things. or a sensitization to things. So like if you have an apple and it's sitting on a table and you leave it for 10 months, it's going to decay, right? If you have a thought in your brain, there's a correlation between what's going on there. If you touch a hot surface, there's going to be a correlation with these processes. What is it? It's a chemical interaction. The signal's sent up your neurons. You know, the apple is decaying through chemistry. Chemistry, in both cases, is relying on electron interactions. Electrons are spun and motivated by the life force, the chi. Now, how does this work? Shishkin, Karols, and Dubovik, and you can go and look these up on remoteview.icu, they show that this condensed cluster of relic neutrinos, this actually has an ability to pull in the relic neutrinos from the environment, and it comes into the center of that toroid, and it forms a relationship with the electrons. So the question I had earlier was, in my life, was how do the electrons keep spinning? They answer this by saying that all of these relic neutrinos that were supposedly left over from the birth of the universe, it's not necessary for that, but if that's the case, then that's okay. They're all just a little under 2 Kelvin. So you can go and look up relic neutrinos on Wikipedia and you can see that this is true. I think it's about 1.96 Kelvin. That's very, very close to nearly absolute zero. That's how they can form a condensate where the wave function, like the Bose-Einstein condensate, is the same wave function through the whole universe. They're effectively one thing. You input information into that, and it's available at all points of the universe instantaneously without any time delay, right? And because it's a superfluid, it will always echo that information for all of eternity, okay? So you have this thing in the atom, and it still has energy. It's non-zero. It comes in, and if the electrons need a bit of energy, it extracts a very little bit of energy and keeps those electrons spinning. If it has too much energy, it'll push through the relic neutrino condensate and it'll push that energy out into the condensate. So the bulk condensate on the outside, the ether, let's say. So you have an interplay where the atom can keep spinning. Okay? This is also going on where you can over-energize material with this flux going through. So if the atoms are kept spinning with this energy, and you put too much energy through, then the atom can either get too excited so it can't maintain a polar bond, or it can't maintain a chemical bond, or it may actually fall apart. And it's about the flux of chi, the flux of the prana, the Holy Spirit. You need to take no more than you need. And these are teachings that Jesus, would teach. Only take what you need, don't take any more. And that is the way to work with nature. So that aside, I believe the pyramid is doing that, and it's disrupting that calcium carbonate that's down there in the subterranean chamber in the same way that a water spout causes water to be levitated. And this comes on to the concept of levitation. And
so they created this substance that would show up in the sarcophagus in the king's chamber, and they would use that for to be able to see past and to see future and to be able to understand what were they doing.
So I spoke. There's a device called the Integratron, which I believe was a device to simulate what the pyramid does in terms of being able to see through. And so Graham Hancock was talking about, I've been in the pyramid, I've stood on the where the pyramidion would have stood, and you feel differently there. You feel energized and so forth. And he's not the only person to have reported that. If you go to remoteview.icu and go to the Integratron, and if you can pull that up, Ryan, basically, you have an ability, everyone has an ability, to write information into this superfluid condensate of relic neutrinos and or potentially other dark matter through the action of toroidal moment. Now, how do we know this? Well, I suspected this when I was doing experiments. I was going near these cold fusion experiments, these low-energy nuclear reaction experiments, and I'm on video in 2015 saying, I literally feel weird and difficult to think when I'm close to these experiments. Okay, so I came to the conclusion that the experiments, how they were manipulating matter, was something similar to what's going on in consciousness, because, presumably I'm conscious, right? And so I said this, and then in June the 15th last year, Sydney Technical University, they did some studies using functional magnetic resonance imaging on subjects in a conscious state doing cognitive tasks. And what they found was that oxygen in hemoglobin makes oxygenated blood, and that gives you a diamagnetic state of the blood. If you have it deoxygenated, it's paramagnetic. And using functional magnetic resonance imaging, you can see magnetic vortices and anti-vortices during conscious state doing cognitive tasks, and they can image them on the brain. And so there's a paper published in a mainstream journal where they show this. And if you've got a magnetic vortex and an anti-vortex, that produces the toroidal moment. So they don't discuss the toroidal moment. They probably don't even know what a toroidal moment is. But whether they like it or not, what they have demonstrated is that the brain can interact with the toroidal moment of the condensate, the chi, the life, the force, the prana that goes through us and is in all matter in the universe and is everywhere at the same time. So imagine that if we all were interacting in exactly the same way, there would be no you or me. There would be no ego. There would be no identity of self. So there must be something that allows for difference. Now, I just need to check my facts here to get I need to credit the right name here. So let me just get this right. There is a theory of consciousness called the Penrose-Hamerhoff method. So Penrose gets a double mention in this stream. And this is the idea that inside every neuron, there are things called microtubules, millions of them, in every neuron, in every brain cell in your brain. Okay, there we go. So you've got microtubules there.
This is the answer to the question, what were they doing with it?
Yes, it is.
Yep. Okay.
Yes, it is. It's the precise answer. And unfortunately, it takes a bit of time because you have to know the pieces of the puzzle.